Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the course Media and Society in Pakistan. Today I will discuss a topic with you. The title is Threats to Pakistani Journalism. As you all know that killings of journalists in Pakistan is currently decline, as the country's powerful military quietly but effectively restricts reporting by barring access, encouraging self-censorship through direct and indirect acts of intimidation, and even allegedly instigating violence against reporters. Journalists who push back are overly critical of authorities are attacked, threatened, or arrested. The near fatal attack on investigative journalist Ahmad Noorani last October stood out for one reason. Assailants trailed Noorani's car for miles before attacking him with a tire iron on a busy Islamabad streets. The journalist who covers the sensitive political issues that often involve the military was saved only through the interventions of passers-by. The attack followed a pattern all too familiar to Pakistan's press. Nearly a year later, no arrests, just silence and an unmistakable message that those who report critically on sensitive subjects, including the military, the courts, or religion, should treat carefully. The climate for press freedom in Pakistan accompanied a reduction in murders and attacks against the media. Journalists and press freedom advocates say that the two trends are linked, with measures the military took to stomp out terrorism directly, resulting in pressure on the media. When Chief Justice of Pakistan traveled to different cities in Pakistan like Karachi, Islamabad, Peshawar, Lahore, and Okara earlier this year, the journalists, including freelancers and those from established media companies, painted a picture of a media under siege. Many traced the changes to two events in 2014. A shooting that injured Geo TV anchor Hamid Mir and led to a fallout among media groups and with the military, and aftermath of a terrorist attack in Peshawar that left over 130 students dead. The military garnered widespread praise for its crackdown on militancy after the school attack, which resulted in a sharp decline of terrorist incidents, and in return, violence against journalists. Yet the stepped up activity put the military in position to exert even greater control. The military already wields influence and power in Pakistan, where it is deeply embedded in society, as well as the country's economic and political systems. The armed forces are seen widely as an effective institution that holds the nation together and offers protections. To the east, Pakistan faces India, a far longer and powerful neighbor that is considered hostile and with whom it has a territorial dispute over Kashmir. To the west is Afghanistan, unstable and mountainous border that creates obstacles to security. While the military submits to the formalities of civilian rule, it sees itself as a bulwark against what some view as the chaos of democratic politics, but it remains sensitive to criticism or allegations such as its apparent support for terrorist groups in neighboring countries, including the Afghan Taliban and Lashkar-e-Taiba, which is accused of staging the 2008 Mumbai terrorist attack. The military has quietly but effectively set restrictions on reporting, from barring access to regions including Balochistan, where there is armed separatism and religious extremism, to encouraging self-censorship through direct and indirect methods of intimidation, including calling editors to complain about coverage and even allegedly instigating violence against reporters. The military, intelligence, or military linked and political groups were the suspected source of fire that resulted in half of the 22 journalist murders in the past decade. Hence, it is easy to see how the military's widening reach is viewed as a source of intimidation. The military has clashed with Pakistan's elected government, which tried and ultimately failed to assert civilian control. Journalists find themselves in the middle of this battle, struggling to report while staying out of trouble. Different issues like including religion, land disputes, militants, and the economy can all spark retaliation, and laws such as the Pakistan Protection Ordinance, a counter-terrorism law that allows people to be detained without charge for 90 days, are used to retaliate against critical reporting. Female journalists must navigate additional pressures when reporting in religiously conservative areas such as Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or rural districts. A detailed request for comment on this report, emailed to Major General Asif Ghafoor, he was a spokesman for the armed forces, was not answered. General Ghafoor earlier didn't respond to a request for a meeting. A scheduled interview with then the information minister in Islamabad was cancelled at the last minute by the government. With the high profile attacks like the failed assassination of Geo TV's Hamid Mir, journalists say they are often forced to play it safe by toning down or avoiding controversial but newsworthy stories. Sometimes, as Noorani found, even the briefest lapse in security can expose a journalist to near fatal consequences. Noorani, who writes for the daily newspaper, which is the News, he admits that he had made a mistake before his attack. For the first time in years, he said during an interview in Islamabad, he used an unencrypted phone line to make an appointment for the next day. Usually he uses an encrypted apps to prevent others from eavesdropping on conversations. Someday he doesn't know exactly who must have been listening it. He said that in his interview. When Noorani started off on about 20 kilometers drive from his home, windows down on a pleasant day, neither he nor his driver noticed that the motorcycles tailing the car. When the car entered one of a few stretches along the route with no video surveillance, one of the motorbikes pulled in front of the car and stopped. Noorani's driver tried to maneuver away, but one of the motorbikes spun faster around the car, and at roughly 25 miles per hour. The rider stretched through the open window and grabbed the ignition key, forcing Noorani's car to stop. It was then Noorani said that he had made his second mistake, seeing that he thought were a few homeless teenagers whom he took to be students. Noorani stepped out of the car. The apparent students attacked him with knives, cutting him on the back of his head. One took a hard, well-aimed swing to his left temple with a tire iron, knocking Noorani to the ground. Only the intervention of construction workers interrupted the attackers, poised for a second blow to the head in what doctors told Noorani would likely have killed or incapacitated him for life. His attackers fled. Noorani spent 4 days in hospitals. His driver was also injured. Now the question is, who attacked Noorani and why? Like so much else that happens to journalists in Pakistan, precisely identifying culprits is not an easy. The police investigation said that Noorani turned up nothing aside from evidence that the attack was well planned. And yet the answers come swiftly from journalists and others whom the Chief Justice of Pakistan asked about the attack. The establishment, the deep state, the powers that be are from the more brave, the military, or even the ISI, Pakistan's powerful inter-services intelligence agency. Pakistan has had multiple military coups. Nominally today it's ruled by an elected civilian government. The previous government, led by the Pakistan Muslim League, failed to win re-election on July 25 July, with its leader, former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. He was jailed on corruption charges just before the vote. Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf won a popularity of seats, and he was sworn in as Prime Minister on 18 August 2018. Heading a coalition government, Pakistan's constitution guarantees freedom of the press and access to information, and the country has a large and robust media industry, including intensive privately held broadcast news. And yet, as the Chief Justice of Pakistan, he found true press freedom is elusive, while the military is not solely responsible for the pressures facing the media. Its hands can be found almost everywhere. In 2013, the Chief Justice of Pakistan's special report on Pakistan found that near complete impunity after a multi-year spike in the murders of journalists, along with an increase in terror attacks. While impunity remains an unsolved issue, Pakistan has appeared in every annual impunity index. The CPJ research shows that fewer journalists are being killed in retaliations for their work. The journalists and press freedoms advocates said the decline in press violence came after the military's swift response to the December 2014 attack on the Army Public School in Peshawar, when gunmen affiliated with the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan or Pakistan Taliban, an Islamist group that shares an ideology with but is separate from the Afghan militants, killed over 145 people, including 132 students. The army launched attacks in militant controlled areas. It also set up paramilitary forces, including the Rangers in Karachi, which was hit by the violence associated with the secular political party Mudahida Qawmi Movement, which is MQM, or the Frontier Corps in the western provinces of Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The MQM is accused of carrying out attacks on journalists, with police in 2011 saying they suspected it of being involved in the murder of Geo TV's Wali Khan Babar. While a drop in the murders of journalists is good news, the threat of attack remains. Many journalists and editors said a widespread sense of intimidation has led to self-censorship on issues that may provoke government officials, militant groups, religious extremists, or of course the military. During a conversation in Islamabad, Iqbal Khattak, founder of the journalist safety group Freedom Network, he said that threats to journalists haven't gone away, even if the source and character has evolved. If you look at Karachi, he said that there was a political party which was accused of intimidating, harassing, taking journalists away. This threat has been significantly taken out, and the force that took this threat out is itself now a threat to journalists in the media houses. This phenomena, he said, that can be seen across the country. Owais Aslam Ali, the Secretary General of Pakistan Press Foundation, a non-profit training and advocacy group, said that a more cautious approach to covering sensitive topics, essentially self-censorship, accounts for much of the reduction in violence. Ali, who has led the foundation since 1992, he said that the long, slow march toward greater press freedom in Pakistan has gone in reverse over the past 4 years. Consequences are harsh for journalists who attempt to push back. Like in October 2016, days after Cyril Almeida, a columnist for the English language daily newspaper Dawn, who wrote about a clash within the cabinet between the leaders of then the ruling party PMLN Noon and the military. The journalist's name was added to the ECL, which is Exit Control List. The list, maintained by the Interior Ministry, contains names of individuals barred by authorities from leaving the country. Almeida reports, known as the Dawn Leaks, described how the government warned the military that Pakistan faced international isolation unless it cracked down on Islamist groups accused of attacks beyond its border. The report said that the Prime Minister's younger brother Shehbaz Sharif, the Chief Minister of Punjab Province, accused the military of working to free militants arrested by authorities. So how the journalist should be protected, or a safety of a journalist, which is the ability for journalists in media professionals to receive, produce and share informations without facing a physical or moral threats. Journalists can face violence and intimidation for exercising their fundamental right to freedom of expression. The range of threats they are confronted to include murder, kidnapping, hostage taking, offline and online harassments, intimidations, enforced disappearances, torture them. Especially women journalists are also face special dangers and are especially vulnerable to sexual assaults, whether in the form of a targeted sexual violation, often in a reprisal for their work, mob-related sexual violence aimed against journalists, covering public events, or the sexual abuse of journalists in detention or capacity. Many of these crimes are not reported as a result of powerful cultural and professional stigmas. Increasingly, journalists and particularly women journalists are facing abuse and harassment online, such as hate speech, cyberbullying, the cyber stalking, the public shaming, and intimidation and threats. I think that's enough for today. Thanks for watching my video. Kindly subscribe my channel so that whenever I upload a new video lecture, then you will get it easily. Thank you once again and best of luck.